Anne Boleyn does not stand alone in history. She walks a shadowed path beside other legendary women who climbed too high and paid too dearly. Cleopatra, crowned too young and demonized too often. Marie Antoinette, misunderstood and executed in a public spectacle. Empress Alexandra, lost in mysticism as her empire crumbled. Princess Diana, hunted by fame, adored by millions, and destroyed by an institution she couldn't bend. What unites them is not just their deaths, but their visibility. Their power, their refusal to remain silent, their ability to sway empires with a word, a glance, a gesture. Anne Boleyn was the blueprint. She was the moment the personal became political, and lethal. At court, image was everything. Anne mastered it, until it mastered her. She used fashion as armor. French hoods instead of English gable hoods, jewels that signaled allegiance and rebellion, colors that spoke louder than any words. She shaped trends. But she also drew envy like a flame draws moths. In a male-dominated world, Anne's wit was mistaken for arrogance, her silence for plotting, her miscarriages for curses. Her very intelligence was used as evidence of sorcery. Powerful women are rarely allowed to be complex. They must be saint or sinner, angel or traitor. Anne was all and neither, and that is what makes her dangerous, still. In classrooms, Anne Boleyn's name is still spoken with heat. In novels and plays, she is resurrected, re-examined, reimagined. In social media and feminist debate, she is a cipher, invoked in discussions about glass ceilings, toxic systems, and the price of ambition. In a way, Anne Boleyn has become a mirror. We see in her what we fear, what we admire, what we hope we could be, and dread becoming. Not as a ghost. Not as a queen. But as a question. What happens when a woman stops playing by the rules, and writes her own instead? In the final days before her execution, Anne was imprisoned in the Tower, the very place where she had once watched her coronation procession from golden barges. It was there she is believed to have written one final, desperate, dignified letter to Henry VIII. Whether or not it was ever delivered or even written by her own hand remains debated, but the contents are as powerful as any verdict. Your Grace's displeasure and my imprisonment are things so strange unto me. Never prince had a more loyal wife, never wife had a more faithful husband. But I am ready to be judged, by God and not by man. That letter is now preserved, not in the royal archives of power, but in the hearts of historians, feminists, and readers who recognize it as something deeper than a message, a final reclaiming of her own voice. Anne's heraldic emblem was a falcon, white, elegant, and proud, standing on a Tudor rose crowned in gold. That image was meant to convey purity and nobility. After her death, it was erased from tapestries and buildings, but never from memory. Today, the falcon is one of the most recognizable royal symbols in English history, not for what it once stood for but for the woman it refused to bury. Anne's motto as queen was, "The most happy," a phrase drenched in irony perhaps, but also in courage. She chose it. She claimed happiness not as a gift but as a declaration. In a life stalked by shadows that was its own rebellion. In an age of spectacle and scrutiny, Anne Boleyn feels more contemporary than ever. She knew what it meant to be watched, judged, punished for power. She lived through smear campaigns, public scorn, political traps, and in the end, through a weaponized narrative that turned love into execution. Modern women in politics, in media, even in monarchy, from Hillary Clinton to Meghan Markle, face echoes of Anne's fate. Different tools, same tactics. Suspicion, vilification, silencing. And story then is not past. It is prophecy. Though Anne Boleyn's body was left to rot beneath the stone floor of St. Peter ad Vincula, her bloodline rose from that unmarked grave, and reshaped an empire. Elizabeth I, Anne's only surviving child, would never marry, never bear children, and yet she is the cornerstone of what we now call the Tudor myth. It is through her that England found its national identity, its global voice, its literary golden age and its Protestant backbone. But behind Elizabeth's red hair and imperious poise, Anne's presence whispered. The intellectual fire Elizabeth wielded? The sharp tongue and sharper instinct? The ability to manipulate court factions, ride tides of scandal, and rule without being ruled? That too. Anne Boleyn did not die childless. She gave birth to a queen, to an age, to a story so fierce it would outlive those who tried to bury it. Elizabeth rarely spoke Anne's name. There are no great speeches of mourning, no state-funded tributes, no royal portraits with mother etched beneath Anne's image. What? Perhaps the pain was too great. Perhaps she could not politically afford it. Or perhaps, like many women who lose their mothers too soon, she carried her memory not on her sleeve but in her marrow. Still, subtle symbols appeared. A ring worn by Elizabeth, containing a miniature portrait of herself and a second hidden image, believed to be Anne. The phoenix, a bird of resurrection, often featured in Elizabeth's royal iconography. Public executions ceased in the same brutal form during Elizabeth's reign. The child of an executed queen forged herself into a monarch who ruled alone, who bowed to no man, and who never again let history take a mother from her throne. Today in the lush countryside of Kent, Hever Castle still stands. It was Anne's childhood home, a place of laughter, books, and distant ambition. Visitors walk its halls and gardens, touching the carved stones she once knew. In one of its quiet chambers sits Anne's Book of Hours, a personal devotional prayer book. Inside, in elegant, slanted handwriting she inscribed, "Remember me when you do pray, that hope doth lead from day to day." It's not a demand. Not even a plea. It's a whisper across time. Not "remember how I ruled." Not "remember how I died." Remember me. And we have. To many historians, Anne Boleyn was not just a queen consort, she was a blueprint for the modern woman. Educated, opinionated, complex. She read Tyndall, quoted Erasmus, debated scripture with clergymen, and openly supported reforms that challenged 1,000 years of church dominance. Her marriage didn't just break England from the Pope, it fractured the medieval world, ushering in a dangerous new age of individual conscience, where even a woman's voice could rattle empires. And didn't live in an age made for women like her. But centuries later we live in the age she helped create. Her tragedy was rooted in her time. Her power, in ours. Every century since Anne's death has reinterpreted her. In the 18th century she became a tragic romantic heroine, soft, misunderstood. In the 19th, a moral warning about women who reached above their station. In the 20th and 21st, a feminist icon, a victim of misogyny, a complex survivor. From Genevieve Bujold's commanding intensity in Anne of the Thousand Days to Natalie Dormer's calculating charm in The Tudors, from stage to page, and has never stopped being reborn. Even politicians and royalty have evoked her legacy. In 2020, British MP Jess Phillips referenced Anne in a speech about the consequences women face for ambition. Online communities now analyze her downfall through the lens of toxic masculinity, state violence, and historical injustice. She's been villain, vixen, victim. But always visible. And Boleyn belongs to no one, and everyone. But for all the layers of retelling, the jewelry, the executions, the stormy love affairs, Anne Boleyn was still a woman. A real one. One who laughed, grieved, hoped. She prayed in the tower. She held her daughter. She dreamed of power, not for its own sake but for what it could offer. Safety, recognition, permanence. And in the end she lost everything, except her name. She was not born royal. But she made herself unforgettable. In the silence of her final days, Anne Boleyn didn't just face death. She stared into history. And history blinked. May 19, 1536. It is morning. The air over the Tower of London is heavy. The scaffold stands prepared. The crowd waits, not with anger but unease. They are here to see a queen die. Anne Boleyn steps out dressed in grey, her dark hair tucked beneath a simple French hood. No jewels. No crown. Only composure. She speaks not of guilt nor vengeance. Only of mercy. Only of God. And then, silence. The French executioner, skilled and swift, waits for her to kneel, and with one clean stroke Anne Boleyn is no more. No fanfare. No royal farewell. Just a body hastily buried beneath the chapel floor. No tomb. No title. No trace except in those who would remember. She came from the quiet halls of Hever. She rose to the throne of England. She died on a wooden platform built for spectacle. But Anne Boleyn's power was never in her crown, it was in the fire she lit. Her child, Elizabeth I, would rise from disgrace to rule an empire. Her enemies, Cromwell, the courtiers, the judges, are dust. Her husband, Henry VIII, would marry 4 more times and die haunted, his eyes clouded with regret and rot. But Anne? She walks still. In classrooms. In protests. In novels. In mirrors. Anne Boleyn did not live to see the legacy she built. But she is the legacy. Anne Boleyn. The most happy. The most hunted. The most remembered.